It's an Arizona Fall League recap, and we need to pump the brakes a little on Jakob Marsee. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Halloween! Little brief aside here, this episode was recorded on Monday morning at 9:58 a.m. About 4:30 in the afternoon on Monday afternoon, Jeff Ponce of Baseball America wrote an article that is, in essence, the exact same thing as this first segment. I did not realize how much that scenario was my absolute nightmare. So, if you are an avid Baseball America reader, you have already heard a lot of the content that is in this first segment. Just kind of clarifying, we recorded this independently from what Baseball America wrote about Jakob Marsee, but they do have some very interesting statistics and they can contextualize some of the claims that we make about Jakob Marsee and his lack of power. So, interesting article. I'll link it in the episode description. I'll link it in the show notes. Go out and read it if you're a subscriber to Baseball America. If you're not, you should totally do that and enjoy the show. Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, award-winning baseball writer and podcaster. Thank you for making this your first listen every single day. We're proudly part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And I want this to be your show. If you have questions for Monday's mailbag, segment ideas, show ideas, anything like that, tons of ways to get them to us. I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. The show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. And we have a link tree in the episode description and in the show notes with everything else. Discord, subtext, email, all of that. I want to hear from you. So as we do every Tuesday, Arizona Fall League recap. We're halfway through the schedule out in the desert, and I want to talk about Jakob Marsee. He's having a very good year in the Arizona Fall League. He is probably the top performer in the Arizona Fall League, but I think right now we're dealing with a little bit of, we don't have anything else going on, and so we're spending a little bit too much time and attention and giving a little bit too much weight to what's happening in the Arizona Fall League, and there's some legitimate reasons to pump the brakes on Jakob Marsee. So let's recap what he's done. 2022 sixth rounder out of Central Michigan. Looked really good as a redshirt sophomore, and so was taken in the sixth round by the Padres. Went to low A after getting signed, and then last year spent 129 games combined between High A, Fort Wayne, and Double A. 274, 413, 428 was the slash line. Most of this was in High A, Fort Wayne. 113 of the 129 games. He only spent just over 2 weeks in Double A San Antonio. 16 home runs, 35 extra base hits for Jakob Marsee. Again, 129 games, 35 extra base hits. 98 walks to 97 strikeouts, 46 of 55 on stolen bases. There are plenty of good things to like about Jakob Marsee, okay? Played center field, had 11 errors, but played mostly center field. Outside of center field, it was left field. That kind of just the scouting report there is that the arm isn't quite strong enough to play right. And when you look at the defense, 966 fielding percentage, he had 6 outfield assists, he had 11 errors. He's probably going to end up being a corner outfielder, just from the looks I've seen, combined with some of the scouting report and the production that he's done. And so you're looking at a left fielder because the arm isn't necessarily that strong. Now, he had a good year, okay? One prospect in all of the minor leagues had 15 or more home runs, 30 or more strikeouts, and more walks than strikeouts, and that's Jakob Marsee. So he had a very good year, and in the Arizona Fall League, he is performing very well. 18 games, he's 29 of 69 with 4 home runs, 14 extra base hits, 17 walks to 19 strikeouts, and 14 of 15 on stolen bases. He leads in total bases, he has the highest OPS, and he leads in stolen bases. Here's the thing. We talked multiple times on this show, including just recently, about process over results. The high A and double A StatCast information is not public knowledge. I do not have the numbers for Jakob Marsee. I have been told from people that I trust, that Jakob Marsee's exit velocities are bad. Not average, not good, bad. We do have a limited set of exit velocities from the Arizona Fall League. And so for Jakob Marsee, in his batted ball events in the Arizona Fall League, his 90th percentile exit velocity is 94.9. Not his average, his 90th percentile. His max is 101. And so there's been a little bit of an overreaction. I've seen it online with fans. I've seen it from different people in the prospect apparatus, especially in the fantasy baseball side. That's really where I've seen it. Talking about we've way underrated Jakob Marsee. And I saw him like outside the top 500 in a lot of prospect or fantasy focused prospect rankings. And that feels like he's rated pretty lowly, but if you look at what he does and what he projects to be at the major league level, he projects to be Steven Kwan with a little bit better defense and better speed. So for context, 305 games for Steven Kwan over the last 2 seasons. 282, 356, 384. That's a 739 OPS. He's got 11 home runs. He's got 40 stolen bases in 2 seasons, 132 walks to 135 strikeouts. If you are in fantasy, that is not bad, especially in a points league. That's helpful in a points league. He's valuable in a points league. But you will not win a fantasy baseball championship with a roster full of Steven Kwans. And I think a lot of people have overreacted to what Jakob Marsee has done in the Arizona Fall League and have moved him way higher in the rankings than he needs to be. Because the issue you have for Jakob Marsee is he has a good floor to get to the major leagues, right? He can play defense. Again, I don't think he'll end up in center field. He can play defense. He can make contact very well. He can draw walks. But the impact is not going to be there. The batted ball impact, we have not seen it yet. And this is not something where this is an incredibly young player that we're waiting for him to mature. This is a 3-year player in college who is 22 years old. There is a little bit of development that sometimes can happen at that point, but he's listed at 6 foot 180. There's not a ton of extra projection that you can get on Jakob Marsee. And so if you're the type of person that already had him in fantasy and somebody offers you a top 100 asset or even a top 200 asset, probably worth moving Jakob Marsee. If he's out there in your league and your league rosters more than 200 prospects, it's probably not worth going out and getting Jakob Marsee for your roster. It's something where it's a great, it continues the breakout season for Jakob Marsee. Yes, it was a good year this year. Again, he was the only player with that combination of home runs, steals, and more walks than strikeouts. But he's not a top 100 real-life prospect or fantasy prospect. He is more valuable in real life than he is in fantasy. You need guys like him on your team. But the impact he's going to be able to make is limited simply because the lack of power, the lack of quality to the batted ball events. In just a minute, speaking of Cleveland and Steven Kwan, one of their top prospects has looked pretty good in the Arizona Fall League, and we'll get to that next right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is incredibly easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, spreads, individual player props, over-unders, and more. So, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Okay, so looking back at the Arizona Fall League week, another guy who had a good week in the Arizona Fall League and ultimately has had a good Arizona Fall League campaign since we're halfway through is Chase DeLauter of the Cleveland Guardians. So, missed a lot of time this season, had a fractured foot that he had surgery on, missed time in 2022 as well. And so, part of the reason that Chase DeLauter came to the Arizona Fall League was to make up at-bats, right? He only got 24 games in 22 in his draft year at James Madison because of injury. And then this year, he only got 57. And 9 of those were in rookie ball. So he got 42 games in high A, 6 games in double A. Now combined, the numbers were very good for Chase DeLauter in that window, right? 57 games, 355, 417, 528. 5 home runs, 27 extra base hits, 23 walks to 30 strikeouts, and 6 and 9 on stolen bases. He has continued to perform in the Arizona Fall League. The numbers aren't as absurd as what he did in mostly high A Lake County at age 21, but 17 games in the Fall League on the Fall League season so far. He's 17 of 63 with 4 home runs and 6 extra base hits. It's a slash line of 270, 358, 492. 10 walks to 6 strikeouts and 5 of 6 on stolen bases. And specifically, in this last week, 6 of 14, 2 home runs and a double, 4 runs and 8 RBIs, 1 walk and 1 strikeout, 1 for 2 on stolen bases. He's been making quality contact. His 4 home runs, he's tied for 3rd. He has the most RBIs in the Arizona Fall League with 23. And for a Cleveland team that really struggled to get impact at the major league level from their hitters, I think I threw the stat out on here. Atlanta's top 4 hitters had more home runs than the entire Guardians roster in 2023. Chase DeLauter is definitely somebody that can bring some impact. The question's going to be, when is he going to be able to do it, right? How much time will he need in the minors to develop and to catch up on that development curve because of the missed time? Size-wise, 6'4", 235, he's got good strength. He's got good power. You like that. The strike zone discipline has seemingly always been there. He walked more than he struck out in college. His time in the minors, he looked pretty good there. The speed is pretty decent. He's been playing a lot of center field. I still think he's going to end up as a corner guy simply because it's like he's played center field and been fine, but you're probably going to have better defenders than him. And he has played 12 of his 16 games in the Fall League have been in right field. So the arm is good enough to play right. The speed's good to be a above average to plus defender in right field. Whereas you play him in center field, he's going to be fine. But again, you're probably going to find better defenders, especially Cleveland. It feels like Cleveland prioritizes contact hitters who have good defense. So they're going to find better center field defenders than Chase DeLauter. But no, he is a quality player. He just needs reps, as many as possible. That's why he's in Arizona. He needs high-level reps. I don't think you see him in 2024. It feels like you're going to, he'll probably start off in AA, and it may be a AA to AAA year, and maybe you see him at the very end of the year. You see him for, after September, he gets a call-up, he retains rookie eligibility. If he hits well, then you think he can break camp. He can break spring training in 2025 as a starter and have a Rookie of the Year campaign, because Cleveland's the type of team that needs to try to get those additional draft picks for roster building because they're not going to be as active in free agency as a lot of other teams are. I don't expect to see him for significant amounts of time in the majors in 2024, but it's good to see that he's getting the impact because he has that stable base, everything's healed. The speed hasn't been messed up by the repetitive foot injuries, and looking good for 2024. A player that's really interesting. He played well. That's why I wanted to bring him up. He was added to the AFL like a week and a half ago. CJ Alexander from the Kansas City Royals. So no longer a rated prospect. He's 27 years old. He was traded from the Braves to the Royals in that weird, we're trading Drew Waters for a draft pick thing. So like in 2022, he was moved over there. He's played a lot of corner infield in Kansas City's system. He was a third baseman for Atlanta, but this last season in AAA Omaha, he played mostly first base. They tried him a little bit at third, a little bit at like in right field, and he's DH'd. And this is a Kansas City organization that, because you promoted your best first base options, and Nick Pratto and Vinny Pasquantino, you don't have a ton of first basemen at the minor league level. So it makes sense that despite his good arm, they need him at first, and then they're probably a little bit worried about the defense and what he was going to give you defensively at third base. So he's now a first baseman. The issue that he has, and this is the bigger picture at his season this year, he got 86 games in AAA. The issue that he has is he hasn't really hit for the type of power production that you're looking for from a first baseman. 86 games for CJ Alexander in AAA Omaha this year. 220, 280, 423. 13 home runs, 31 extra base hits, 24 walks to 94 strikeouts, and 4 of 6 on stolen bases. A little bit concerned, again, about the quality of contact, the frequency of contact, and does he have the power to profile as a first base option? And I know a lot of people think they have Vinny Pasquantino at first, and he's not a huge power threat. Vinny Pasquantino, to me, I think is a sneaky good power threat. I think Vinny Pasquantino, to me, reminds me a lot, as a Braves fan, of watching a young Freddie Freeman. And I'm not saying Vinny Pasquantino is going to be as good as Freddie Freeman, but it reminds me a lot of a guy that can give you high batting averages, can hit for plenty of power, and is just going to rope doubles across the ballpark. So Vinny Pasquantino reminds me a lot of a young Freddie Freeman. Obviously, they'd love CJ Alexander to solidify some first base time and give them options in both the minor and the major league level. He's on here because last week he went 7-19, 2 home runs, 3 doubles, and a triple. Of his 7 hits, 6 were for extra bases. He had 4 runs scored. He had 7 RBIs, 3 walks to 3 strikeouts on the AFL season for him, which is only 7 games, mind you. He's 7-24, so he came in 0 for 5, and then since then he's taken off. 5 walks to 6 strikeouts total, 8 RBIs total. Interesting to be popped into the AFL partway through. Kansas City also sent Daniel Lynch, the major league pitcher, to do a rehab start. I watched Victor Scott hit his first lefty home run of, I think his first home run in the Arizona Fall League period, but his first lefty home run in a long time off of Daniel Lynch while Lynch was rehabbing there in the Arizona Fall League. In just a minute, I want to look at some of the leaders in the Arizona Fall League, and let's discuss the good and the bad of these players. We'll do that next right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. Welcome back into Locked On MLB Prospects. Looking at the Arizona Fall League, we're about halfway through the season right now, and your home run leader is Kala'i Rosario, the outfield prospect for the Minnesota Twins. He has 6, and then behind him is Kyle Manzardo and Aaron Sabato, 2 first basemen with 5, and then there's a big gaggle of guys that have 4 home runs that are all tied. Chase DeLauter's in that group, Jakob Marsee's in that group. Damiano Palmagani, Wes Clark, Kevin Alcantara, Billy Cook. There's a whole group of guys there at 4 home runs. But here's the issue for Kala'i Rosario. 18 games, 6 home runs, yeah. He only has 12 hits. So, yes, he's leading in home runs. He has 6 home runs and a double, and then 5 singles. So his slash line is 185, 284, 477. 8 walks to 25 strikeouts, 1 for 2 on stolen bases. And when you look at what Kala'i Rosario did in the minors last year, so reminder here, 2020 fifth rounder out of high school in Hawaii, and spent the whole year this year in High A Cedar Rapids after spending the whole year last year in Single A Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne, 109 games, 239, 320, 408, 12 home runs. Okay. This year, Cedar Rapids, 252, 364, 467. Batting average gets better, on base gets better, slugging gets better. He hits 21 home runs, has 51 extra base hits in 118 games in Cedar Rapids, 75 walks to 157 strikeouts, and 2 of 4 on stolen bases. So the strikeout rate was 29% in the regular season. It's higher in the Arizona Fall League. It's 33% in the Arizona Fall League. And again, small sample sizes, but the strikeout not getting better. And the issue you have, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, the issue you have when you're a guy in this position, when you're Kala'i Rosario trying to get through this minor league system to get to Minnesota, is there are multiple outfield prospects ahead of you. Emmanuel Rodriguez is, depending on who you ask, the number 2 or number 3 prospect in the system. Walker Jenkins, the draft pick this year, top 5 pick, depending on who you ask, is the number 2, number 1 pick in the system. And then shortstop Brooks Lee is the other guy. And you've got to figure out, one, you have to be able to show that that they have to make room for you in the lineup when you get up there. They haven't directly tied these two together, but Edward Julian is a guy that hits so well in the minors that you saw Minnesota be willing to trade away Luis Arraez coming off a batting title to make room for Edward Julian. Now, they never came out and said, we made this trade to make room for Edward Julian, but Edward did so good, he did so well in the minors, that they felt comfortable trading away a guy who won a batting title to add a frontline pitcher in Pablo Lopez, knowing that they had Julian to plug in. And when you look at this Minnesota team, you have a lot of options for guys who either, like I said, are ahead of you in the prospect rankings for the outfield, or are guys who could get moved to the outfield. Royce Lewis has played some outfield. Obviously, Byron Buxton's out there. And when you look at all of the different options that they have as far as like the outfield, you've got Matt Wallner. He looks like he's going to stick. You've got Trevor Larnach. Byron Buxton's the big question here, center field or not. But again, they've used Royce Lewis some at center field. You're going to be making room for Brooks Lee soon. Julian's playing second. And do you move somebody to the outfield to make room in the infield for Brooks Lee? If you do, it's probably Royce Lewis. So that's another player in the outfield. So what Kala'i Rosario has to do is he has to get, like, the power is fantastic, right? It is probably 70 grade raw power, but he has to get better about the swing and miss, and he has to get better about the contact quality. And when you go back and you watch, he gets into a lot of disadvantage counts. So he's got to get better earlier in the at-bat with the swing decisions and not chasing, getting pitchers to come into the zone where he can get quality swings on it, because as he gets into bad counts and the strikeouts add up and the overall batted ball quality is not there. Work to do for Kala'i Rosario. Again, great, he's leading the league in home runs. We know the power is there. The issue is going to be when you don't hit a home run, what happens? And in this case, it's too much strikeouts. A guy that is proving that he is who we thought he was as far as offense is concerned is catcher Dominic Keegan of the Tampa Bay Rays. When you sort the leaderboards by OPS, he has the third best OPS in the Arizona Fall League. Jakob Marsee's number one at 1287. James Triantos of the Cubs is number two at 1274. We've talked about him plenty on these AFL shows. Number three is Dominic Keegan. And when he was drafted out of Vanderbilt by the Tampa Bay Rays, it was the 22 draft, 4th round. They were like, we know offensively you can produce. The question was defense. You have to be able to stick defensively. And so this season, despite being 22 years old, he spent almost half the season in Single A Charleston and then just under half the season in High A Bowling Green, because defensively they had to make sure he could stick. Now, he absolutely raked in Charleston and he hit fine in Bowling Green. The overall slash line, 106 games for Dominic Keegan between Single A Charleston and High A Bowling Green. 287, 386, 467, 13 home runs, 37 extra base hits, 59 walks, 290 strikeouts, and 2 of 3 on stolen bases. But again, the whole reason he stayed at lower levels, and then the whole reason he went to Peoria, to the Fall League to play for Peoria, was to work on the defense. He got 80 games at catcher, and for the first time, first full season in the minors, but he broke 30% caught stealing, including 35% caught stealing in High A Bowling Green. So it already shows that some of the defensive work they've done with him, something where his arm has always been above average. The pop time's pretty good. The blocking is something that he has to work on. He had 9 pass balls in 80 games at catcher in the minors. So a little bit high, but that's better than it was. Better than he was in college as well. And then it felt like the issue he has, honestly, is not laterally, but it's stuff in front of him. So something to work on there. And then he got 15 games at first base and 11 at DH. They're still hopeful he can be a catcher in the top 30 for Tampa Bay. This is a system that's always full of really good defenders and really good prospects. There is exactly one catcher ahead of him on most top 30 lists, and that's Rene Pinto, and he is a backup catcher. There is not a question that he's not going to hit enough to be a starter at the major league level. He is a backup catcher, and I believe he's mostly been their third catcher, rotated up and then gone back down, and he still technically hasn't lost rookie or prospect eligibility, but he's not a starter. So if Dominic Keegan's defense is in fact better, and has gotten to the point where they feel comfortable with him behind the plate, and he's caught 4 of 24 in the Fall League, so not great compared to where he got to during the season. And again, some of that's just the pitchers you're working with and stuff like that. He only has 1 error, and I think he has 1 pass ball so far in the entire Fall League. But if the defense can get to where they want it to be, he's absolutely somebody who could probably start next year in Double-A Montgomery, and then from there can be on a faster track to the majors. I still wouldn't expect to see him before the end of next year, but I absolutely do expect him to probably open up in Double-A Montgomery simply because they don't have any real catchers of acclaim, and they weren't really happy with the catchers they had this year at the major league level, so there's an organizational need, and he's an opportunity to fill it. Fantastic week this week. We have some other stuff coming up. We have a Boston Red Sox show. We're doing another positional top 10, and we're doing an MLB mock draft. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, reminder, if you have questions for the mailbag, show ideas, segment ideas, anything like that, tons of ways to get them to us. I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. We have a link tree in the episode description in the show notes that has Discord links, subtext, email, all of that good stuff. Until next time, remember, it's always a great time to pay a minor leaguer.